the star show he booked for 2, the night the planetarium dimmed for us. At 9:07 p.m., my phone announced a constellation I hadn't asked for. "Your star show is ready, Dylan," the text sang, too pleased with itself. "Private projection Dome B 9:30:10:15 p.m. Scan QR at South Entrance." A thumbnail map pulsed a route across the park to the planetarium, and beneath the blue vein the sender added a line that made my chest forget its script. Note: 2 seats reserved. Dylan had left an hour before in the jacket that flatters him even when mirrors go evangelical. "Wrap toast," he'd said, 2 words that make celebration sound like a meeting. Then notes with Mateo about the soundscape. "Don't wait." Mateo is the kind of quiet that gets paid to mean it. He carries microphones as if they have delicate tempers and listens like he's protecting something you forgot you owned. The apartment's light climbed the wall in clean squares that refused to narrate me. A cinnamon thing warmed in the oven because sweetness is the lie I tell rooms when I am out of plans. I set the phone face down the way we promised to on decent mornings, then turned it over again because misbehavior needs form more than it needs courage. The QR glowed like a small, polite heart. The park had decided on cold and kept its word. Leaves auditioned their exit speeches along the path. The planetarium's concrete slope rose out of the grass like a secret trying to be architecture. A side door wore a reader like a brooch. When I presented the square to its red eye, the lock considered me and made a sound like a verdict that had learned mercy. A staffer with a lanyard and impeccable posture glanced from my phone to my face and smiled, as if privacy were an amenity they offered as a matter of mission. "Dome B," he said. "Down the ramp second left, the operator will meet you." Down the concrete ribbon, night lived in small blue lights set into the floor. The air smelled faintly of dust and cold metal, old lenses, old ambitions. I passed an exhibit about the moon's handwriting and a glass case where a brass orrery tried to keep its dignity. Dome B waited with its door open the width of certainty. A whisper of cool air slid past, the kind that feels like a confession trying not to fog up the glass. Inside, the room was round and necessary. Reclined seats arranged themselves around a low console whose lights blinked as if they were embarrassed to be seen. The dome above was nothing at all yet, dark canvas where the city had forgotten what it wanted. At the console, Mateo stood with his back to me, adjusting the focus of a machine that looked like it had been designed by a romantic who believed geometry could be kind. Dylan leaned on the railing just beyond him, jacket off, shirt sleeves folded into arguments. They both turned at the same time, the choreography of surprise that hasn't had time to rehearse. "Eli," Dylan said, my name with the softness of a receipt. "Your QR thinks I'm invited," I said, because jokes are the leash I use to keep panic from running into traffic. I lifted the screen. It sang. Mateo's mouth did a small, competent thing that wasn't sorry and wasn't defense. He straightened and nodded toward the exit corridor as if to offer me something as neutral as air. "I can give you to the dome," he said. It was not an apology. It was better, absence performed with precision. "Stay," I heard myself say, and the word chose me before I chose it. If I wanted theater, I would have texted. The operator blinked, then made a decision most men don't learn in time. "I'll be in the hall," he said, "unless you need me to aim at something particular." He dimmed the console to the level of a conscience that intends to listen and ghosted through the door without making the night proud about it. We stood in a room designed to be the inside of an eye. Dylan scrubbed a hand along the back of his neck in the exact place my mouth knows better, then let his fingers drop to the rail as if it could answer for him. The dome waited the way attention waits, capable of cruelty if you ask it to show you too much at once. I lied when I left, he said. He doesn't waste adjectives when he wants to be correct. Rap happened. People used their best grammar on goodbye. I told myself I wanted 30 minutes where being interesting didn't have to pass inspection. Mateo, I said, because names are handles and I like my hands full when the floor tilts. Dylan nodded. The console's tiny green LEDs argued with each other under his jaw. I could hear the air system thinking about the integrity of old stars. Are you sleeping with him? The question is a cliff. There isn't a scenic route. You count to one and use your mouth like it's on salary. Not yet, he said, clean, immediate. Then lower, the honesty that knows exactly which muscle wants to bruise. I brought my mouth. The dome went darker, as if agreement were a setting. I moved closer because there are distances that become lies if you honor them too long. At the inside of his wrist where men keep their apologies, his pulse wrote me without permission. His eyes closed the way doors do when they were built by someone who believed in hands. You like wanting that proves something kindness can't, I said. I didn't make it cruel. Cruelty is a lazy substitute for precision. You treat intimacy like a sport and honesty like off-season training. You like to coach, he said, and one corner of his mouth attempted a bad idea and failed politely. Which is unfair and how we're still here. What do you want? I asked. Now not the apology you drafted for daylight. He stepped into the inch that had already decided to become a lie if we let it. Heat traveled across cotton like a fact. He spoke close enough that punctuation found my lower lip. I want to go home, he said. I want you to want me where our towels remember us and desire doesn't require a projector. Behind us, the console sighed, and the dome yielded a scattered handful of lights that had learned to be persuasive long before we did. A smear of the river of stars turned itself on, discreet and correct. Mateo, in the doorway, let out the kind of breath men make when they have chosen to be furniture on purpose. The constellations did their practiced trick of telling stories about animals and heroes to people who ought to know better. I lifted Dylan's chin with 2 fingers and kissed him, not hunger first, but relief. Relief is the kind of appetite you can escort past strangers without demanding they take sides. He leaned into the pressure like a debt that finally liked its math. At the small of his back where his body keeps its best arguments, heat learned my palm again. He made the low sound he doesn't know how to perform on cue, the one that persuades me our kitchen is holy. Overhead, Orion tried to be helpful. I ignored him. I stopped before the dome could pretend to be a witness. He kept his forehead near mine because punctuation beats grammar when air is thin. When we turned, the doorway was empty. Mateo had the good manners to be a choice he'd already made. The console lights pulsed like a planet negotiating with its tide. We sat for a minute in 2 of the reclined seats, elbows touching, staring up at old, organized lies. In some rooms, looking together is the only honest choreography left. I held his hand and pretended the projector was describing mercy rather than math. He rested his head back and let the falseness be beautiful, which is a skill I forget to respect. We left by the staff corridor that doesn't ask you to perform for the lobby. In the elevator, the mirror wrote our names backward and didn't insist either of us fix it. Outside, the park had chosen to remain a rumor. I didn't touch him in the cab. Not touching can be an offering when touching would sign contracts our mouths can't afford before morning. The apartment didn't try to know anything. The cinnamon had kept an unreasonable amount of faith. We ate it at the counter with our fingers because forks would have lied. He leaned into me with the posture that means he's willing to be moved and would like me to be smart about it. I slid my palm back under his shirt and found heat like an address that refused to lose itself. He tipped into me with the particular weight of gratitude. We were careful in bed, not the kind of careful that kills heat, the kind that knows where to fold it. He knows where to set his hand on my ribs so the rest of me turns without issuing a press release. I know where his shoulder hides when it doesn't want to confess, and how to coax it into telling the truth with weight and breath and a mouth that has stopped trying to rescue him and still wants him. I won't diagram it. I'll tell you the room remembered to breathe, and morning forgave us because it had other work. We slept like people who are not finished being correct, light shouldered into the blinds, persuasive but undecided. He made coffee the way he does when he wants me to listen. I opened the window and let cold air state its case. The QR still lived on my phone between us like a witness who didn't understand intimacy's jurisdiction. He started with small truths because small truths keep larger ones upright. The notes had run long. The dome made the city feel negotiable. Mateo's attention had the grammar he wanted to try on. Then he ran out of script and said the part I could keep. He said he is tired of being interesting for a living, tired of being curated, captioned, archived. He said he wanted to be wanted like teenagers are, stupid, earnest, badly lit, forgiven in advance. He said he imagined my mouth more than once under that ceiling and hated the math. He said he was sorry like a man who knows sorry is a tool, not an eraser. I didn't forgive him at the counter. Forgiveness is a daylight animal in morning's charge. I told him to put on the coat that doesn't belong to planetariums and walk with me to the canal where water lies about Paris, and we let it. We sat on the bench we claim in all seasons. Pigeons performed competence. A runner's breath taught our bodies a cadence we could afford. He hooked his thumb in my pocket like humility. I let him. 2 afternoons later, I saw Mateo in a lobby that smelled like ambition and lemon. He gave me the nod men give when they have chosen to be furniture on purpose. He didn't apologize and I didn't deputize. We shared an elevator mirror that spelled our names backward and told no lies. It isn't that we agreed. It's that we learned how to read ourselves both ways. The planetarium keeps its tidy confirmations. I don't trust their fonts or my inbox. I trust the square of light at 4 when it climbs our wall like an idea that finally put on shoes. I trust the heat at the small of his back when my hand decides to remember its job. And if a polite, glowing rectangle ever tries again to decide where I belong, I'll do what I did the night the dome invented a sky for us. Find air, choose kissing over theater, walk him home with my palm resting on the part of him that knows the address, and keep teaching our door, gentle, stubborn, local, to open from the inside.